What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video series here today. Now, I know it's been a long time since I've made my last video, but I am very glad to be back and making another video here for you. Life has just really gotten in the way. I've also been a little bit lazy, and it's just a whole, combination of things that have been stopping me from making videos. But I am here making a video now. I have found the time. I am happy to do it, and I really want to share some gameplay with you guys. It's been a while since I've done that, and I've kind of just been itching to get back into it. Just been really hard to find the time and the motivation. As you can see, I've kind of grown, a Caleb Dorward style beard here. But regardless, I have found the time now to not be lazy, to have motivation to play some Magic for you guys with hopefully some relevant decks in Modern, because Modern has had a lot of changes since I've last made my video, especially related to many of you guys who watch my content. You enjoy blue-white control decks or Jeskai decks and things like that. Jeskai has undergone a massive change, with the inclusion of Teferi, and it's definitely grown in percentage in the metagame as well. And then, of course, recently at the latest Grand Prix, there was a ton of Tron, a lot of Iron Clan or Cart Clan Ironwork combo, and there's a lot of discussion about Ancient Stirrings and whether that card is too strong for Modern, whether it's just fine, maybe we need some unban. So obviously Modern is kind of in a crazy stage right now, and I believe we have an unban announcement in about 2 or 3 weeks at this from today. But regardless of that, as much as I love Jeskai Control, people are gunning for it right now. People are also playing probably a little bit less humans. And so that's one of the matches that we preyed on. And at the same time, it's not like the humans matchup is a lock, right? It's like we have a slightly favorable matchup against humans, but not super favorable. So what I actually ended up doing was kind of dropping Jeskai for a little bit. Now you can see on the left-hand side over there all the decks that I have been playing and trying out in this new metagame. You'll know me, a lot of people know me for playing Jeskai Saheeli, and I tried that out a little bit, and while I had like, 4 different 4-1s, all losing in the final of a competitive league. So, so close to that, trophy. But the deck just wasn't, like, consistently, overtly powerful, right? The deck was, like, able to punish people for stumbling, but you weren't necessarily able to have that powerful, proactive, consistent game plan, right? Because sometimes you drew the control half, sometimes you drew the not control half. Anyways, we don't have to talk about Jeskai Saheeli, but my point is, I was looking for a bit more of a proactive deck that's also, interactive, and is able to just do inherently powerful things. And that's when I stumbled on Mardu Pyromancer. Now, obviously, this deck that you see in front of you here, it's been played for quite a while now. It's definitely not a new deck anymore, and it's definitely probably a tier 1 deck at this point, or a tier 1.5 deck, or modern tiers don't mean anything really, but essentially it's very commonly played, and it's very powerful. And the reason it's so powerful is because it abuses some very powerful graveyard synergies. Okay, so for those of you that have not seen the deck, I'll go over just the basic outline of what you're trying to do. So you're trying to 1-for-1 your opponent, essentially throughout the game, with cards like Inquisition of Kozilek, which you can discard a card from your opponent's hand, and same idea for Thoughtseize. Now you have 4 Inquisitions, 3 Thoughtseize, which means you have a pretty good probability of seeing one of these in the first few turns of the game, which they're most powerful there, but they're also okay in the late game against certain decks, but it really depends. And then you have your removal. You have things like Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, which also goes to the face. You have Dreadbore, which destroys target creature or planeswalker. You have Terminate. And then, of course, you have Kolaghan's Command. Oh, and also Collective Brutality. So all these cards, you'll notice, aside from Fatal Push, most of them are multi-purpose, right? So Lightning Bolt can go to the face, or go to a creature, or go to a planeswalker. Fatal Push obviously just kills a creature. Terminate just kills a creature. But Dreadbore kills a creature or planeswalker. Now, Collective Brutality, also, you can actually use kind of like a Duress mode, which you can reveal their hand and choose an instant or sorcery. You can use it as removal, or you can use it even as kind of like a burn spell, a drain spell. And believe me, that comes up fairly often. And then, of course, Kolaghan's Command, which is not just deal 2 damage to target creature or target or destroy target artifact, but it can also make your opponent discard a card. You can also return target creature from your graveyard. And so this leads me and to start talking about the graveyard synergy of the deck, right? You have cards like Faithless Looting here. This card is so important for the deck. I can't even stress how different the games are when you do draw this card versus not drawing this card. You know, you play 4 of them, so the likelihood of a game that goes a little bit long and you seeing 1 copy is pretty high. And then you just, once you see at least 1 copy of this card, essentially the deck just goes off in combination with Bedlam Reveler. So Faithless Looting, what it does is you draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Now, obviously, that's card disadvantage when you look at that on the surface, right? It's 1 red. You use that 1 red, that card itself, this Faithless Looting, to draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. However, if the cards you're discarding aren't exactly, you know, cards that you don't mind being in the graveyard, for example, Lingering Souls, the big one, or other Faithless Lootings, or any of these instants and sorceries here, which will then fuel your Bedlam Reveler, which costs 1 less to catch for each instant sorcery in your graveyard. It means that Faithless Looting discard mode is not actually a downside. You're not really upset to discard things. You actually want to actively put things in your graveyard. Similar to how decks like Dredge want to put things in the graveyard, we have a similar idea here of how we want things in the graveyard. And once you start 1-for-1ing your opponent and then stockpiling your graveyard and then, you know, looting through your deck, discarding the cards you don't need, using the cards that you do need, you play Bedlam Reveler, you essentially have probably 0 to 1, sometimes 2 cards in your hand, but usually it's 0 to 1, and then you refresh your hand and draw a whole new 3. And then remember that you still have your Faithless Lootings in the graveyard to keep cycling through your deck. You have Kolaghan's Commands to keep rebuying these Bedlam Revelers. You have Lingering Souls, which you probably discarded along the way. And then you also have Young Pyromancer, which again you can get back with Kolaghan's Command, or just keep generating value with all the instants and sorceries in your deck. And so the deck is called Mardu Pyromancer because, you know, this card is very powerful. But oftentimes I feel like the big power of the deck comes from Bedlam Reveler. So in my eyes, I sometimes like to call it, you know, Mardu Reveler. It is Mardu Pyromancer, but Bedlam Reveler you cannot understate how important Bedlam Reveler and Faithless Looting are for this deck. They just go a long way in giving you an immense sort of card advantage. And a lot of pro players have come out and said that this is the better Jund deck in the format right now. Because Jund is known for grinding your opponent and presenting powerful threats. This deck does very similar things as well, but arguably better. Because Lingering Souls is the grind master, and now your 2-mana creature, Bedlam Reveler, is also an Ancestral Recall. So that kind of put into perspective like Bedlam Reveler versus Tarmogoyf, or you can also think of it Bedlam Reveler versus Bloodbraid Elf. Your sources of card advantage are just incredible, and you have wide answers for what's happening in the format against humans, against Affinity, against, you know, Tron is the worst matchup, but you do have some tools there. And there's just obviously having a discard is what I really like over this deck versus like Jeskai, because there are a lot of times in Jeskai where your removal spells line up well, your counter spells line up well, things go great, but it doesn't have that proactive approach to actively disrupt your opponent before they you know, activate their game plan. So what this deck does is actually no matter what deck your opponent is playing, you know, Inquisition, Thoughtseize are almost always going to be relevant and disruptive. And then you just have the general removal spells. So obviously, no blue in this deck, no counter spells, but you don't really need that when you're just grinding through your opponent. And it can get tough sometimes. Board states can get quite ridiculous as you have a Young Pyromancer going, and there's a board stall, but eventually, you generally are favored when games go along that way. You have so many more sources of card advantage than your opponents usually. And so I think I covered mostly of what goes on in the main deck. There's also Blood Moon here, which is just kind of like a cheese you card. In this deck, it's almost free in this deck, and you get so many free wins from Blood Moon. And also that's a big appeal of what I like about Mardu Pyromancer, is that you play Blood Moon, and you really benefit from it, okay? You just get so much game against decks that you should not be beating sometimes, and honestly, when your opponents don't play around it, it is a free win. And what I don't like about Jeskai Control is that it doesn't have that kind of free win button. You know, Teferi feels like a free win button when you resolve it and when you +1 it, but that costs 5 mana. You might be dead by then, right? Blood Moon is just kind of like, well, you know, if I lead on discard, then bolt your mana dork, and then slam Blood Moon, it just feels like the game's over right there. And obviously, you know, that's a lot of things going right for that to happen, but Blood Moon just also shuts off really problematic lands in the format right now. Like, obviously Tron, but also Celestial Colonnade and Search for Azcantha when it's flipped. Also Inventor's Fair, a lot of other man lands like Raging Ravine. It's obviously, even against Affinity, it shuts off all of their man lands. So sometimes I like to keep in 1 or 2 copies of Blood Moon post-board against Affinity. The mana base is pretty straightforward. I am using a basic plains here over the second Sacred Foundry. Now this is kind of a source of heated debate in the Mardu Pyromancer community. I will admit I am not a full-on expert on this deck, far from it, but I have seen people have success with the basic plains, and especially when you're on 3 Blood Moon main deck, I like having access to that basic plains. Now I will not lie to you guys, it has burned me. I have run this deck through a league, through 4 or 5 leagues at this point. I have a 4-1 and a couple 3-2s in there, and the basic plains, especially like when you have a land light hand, or even when you mulligan down to 6 cards and you have 2 lands and one of those is a basic plains, that feels horrible because that basic plains is not doing anything for you aside from maybe helping you cast these Collective Brutalities or Young Pyromancers. Because on 2 lands, obviously that's horrible. Like Blackcliff Plains is pretty rough. You will be able to cast Lingering Souls with any land you draw, but usually you can cast Lingering Souls with any land you draw anyway. So my point is that, yes, this Plains has burned me. It has stopped me from double spelling. It has stopped me from casting Dreadbore Terminate. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I do have a kind of heavy white sideboard here. Normally, it's not as heavy on white in the sideboard, but as you can see, we're running 2 Stonies and 2 Cumballs and 2 Wear and Tears. And we ideally would like to be able to use Tear second mode, which is destroy target enchantment. So because of this, the second plains is not so bad to be able to cast our hate spells under a Blood Moon. Or, if we're under pressure, like against Burn, being able to fetch up a basic plains with Marsh Flats to cast Kambal, helps a lot. And if you don't know what Kambal does, whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this card is great against Storm, against Cart Clan Ironworks, and it's great against Burn as well. So, and you can sometimes bring it in against, control decks if you have things to take out. Moving on to the sideboard, I have 2 Stonies in here, which is not standard, but I really like Stony Silence right now. There's a lot of Affinity, there's a lot of Tron, there's a ton of Cart Clan Ironworks on Magic Online. So having access to this very hateful sideboard card is really important. Now I will say that getting a white source on turn 2 is not always easy with this deck. However, the card is so powerful that I think it's worth it. Then we have 3 Molten Rains because Tron is just an abysmal matchup. And I actually really like Molten Rains against control decks as well. Just being able to just blow up their lands with a Young Pyromancer out, just generate value, keep them off of their Cryptics, their Logic Knots, their Teferis, their Jaces. I really, really enjoy Molten Rain. And then you have Liliana the Last Hope, which is just incredible against little critter decks. And it's also an alternative win condition in board stalls or if your opponent just doesn't have any answers to a Planeswalker. Engineer Explosives, great catch-all spell. Now, normally you would play 2 of these, but I do have Stony Silence in the deck, so I had to make room for it somehow. So I ended up cutting 1 Engineer Explosive and something else for Stony Silence. I can't quite remember. But we also play 4 Leyline of the Void. This is a premier graveyard hate. Graveyard decks like Dredge, like Cart Clan Ironworks, you really want these cards as early as possible. So, like Nile Spellbomb is really, rough on the draw sometimes, and your opponent can just play around that kind of effect. Excuse me. If you just kind of present 1 blow up of their graveyard, and then they just restock and refill, and they go from there. So Nile Spellbomb stops them once. Leyline ideally stops them forever. And so you can't quite protect Leyline of the Void like with a Dispel against like a Nature's Claim, which Cart Clan Ironwork runs, and Dredge often runs some type of these effects as well. So ideally you really want to be able to pair this Leyline with like a discard spell to remove their interaction. But sometimes, especially if you're on the draw, you don't have the luxury of doing that. But it's most powerful when you can play it on turn 0 and then protect it. With that said, I've had games against Cart Clan Ironworks where the games go quite long because you're disruptive and you're applying pressure and things like that, where like a turn 4 or turn 5 Leyline of the Void is not actually the worst thing in the world because they do need to use their graveyard during their combo. They don't need to just stockpile a graveyard before they combo. Okay, so I think I've covered most of this deck. Now, for those of you that have seen this deck, that you're very familiar with it, you probably, maybe found it a little bit boring, but I'm sure that especially because a lot of you that watch my channel don't usually watch non-blue decks, that this is definitely useful to have this little talk about it. But honestly, it really feels like a blue deck. When you're playing this deck, even though you don't have your traditional counter spells, you have your removal, you have your disruption, and you have your draw spells, and you have your card advantage engines, and you have... It's crazy. It really does feel like a blue deck, and it's just so powerful. And so, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy the games that we'll play. So I already have a league fired up with a different deck in the competitive leagues. So I'm thinking that we go in and just do some single queue lobbies for this. And, just to ease back into recording, especially because it's a non-blue deck, and we'll see what you guys think about this deck and the gameplay and things like that. But we're going to go ahead and do single queue competitive lobbies, alright? So we're going to be paying tickets to enter the lobbies, which will hopefully mean that we run into other competitive decks, and you'll be able to see some good gameplay. But no, this is not a competitive league, but we will be going back to competitive leagues after I, ease back into recording, get comfortable again, get the motivation, get the the practice and things like that. Just getting back into the the habit of playing well while talking, while recording, and all that good stuff. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the following videos. Alright, what's up everybody? Welcome to the first match here with Mardu Pyromancer. We won the die roll, and yeah, we'd love to play first. Whew, this hand's a bit of a clunker, alright, but I think it's keepable. On the play, I think it's a bit more keepable. Roll the one every time, alrighty. Yeah, so, I do, not the ideal hand. Not the ideal hand, but we have mana and we have Reveler. Collective Brutality is one of those cards where it could be really good or it could be pretty bad in the matchup. It really depends, but we can kill like a turn 1 bird, can kill a Dark Confidant maybe. If our opponent fetches up a discard spell here, we, Thoughtseize. Well, I imagine we're losing our Reveler here. Verdant Catacomb Swamp makes me want to... So it depends what they take here. If they take a Brutality, then I'm probably not going to just cast one. But if they take Reveler, then I'm probably going to cast one of those. Obviously depends on what we draw. Hopefully not a land. Lingering Souls. Well, I can pitch that. Would be nice to cast it for full value, but obviously we... it looks like it is Jund. They do have Bloodbraid Elf. I'm going to go ahead and take their K command. That's their best value card. So my opponent's kind of in a rough spot. If they don't cast Scavenging Ooze, then, well, they could cast Scavenging Ooze on turn 3. But if they do cast Scavenging Ooze, I kill it with Brutality. If they don't, then, I'll just cast, my Lingering Souls, and then they have done nothing that turn. But it looks like they're just just shocking in. The Stomping Ground, I assume to keep up Abrupt Decay. Yeah, we'll play that. Just, flashback Lingering Souls. Obviously, that's one less Instance of Sorcery card in our graveyard. But we don't want them to play Scavenging Ooze next turn and then exile it from our graveyard. Drew a bolt, and they bolted the thing. Okay. Sure. I feel like they should have Abrupt Decayed the thing. Right? Because this turn they can go Scooze. Oh, I guess Scooze eats Reveler. Yeah, Scooze eats Reveler, so it becomes a 3/3. Which is really nice. And we're drawing lands. Not great. Well, we're not blocking with this Spirit, so we'll go ahead and attack. I guess we want to play out the Bloodstained Mire. Fetch up a Sacred Foundry in case we draw another Lingering Souls. It's funny how I made the comment about being the better Jund, and you know we're getting classic Junded right now. Alright, so that's the reason we didn't collect Brutality targeting the Scavenging Ooze. Hopefully next turn they play a Bloodbraid Elf and we can Brutality it, plus take that Abrupt Decay from their hand. Okay, that works too. So we know one of the cards in the hand is a Bloodbraid Elf. Definitely kind of scary, but we can come back from this. Unfortunately, this is going to keep eating away at our graveyard. But we can find a Lightning Bolt. We can find a Fatal Push. Well, we'll start there. See if our opponent has like a Dark Confidant, or okay. It's like we'll take the Tarmogoyf happily. Play out another Swamp. Leave our opponent with Bloodbraid Elf, Abrupt Decay, and then again if our opponent. Sure. Alright, well, there's the land. So it looks like we are going to get Bloodbraid Elf here. Oh, right. Scooz became a 4/4. That's rough. That means even Bolt doesn't answer it. Jeez. Okay. We're in a rough spot here. I think now we're forced to kill the Confidant, only to grow the Scooz even more. Young Pyromancer, I guess that's not the worst card. That definitely buys us some time, right? Cast with 2 modes, target creature loses, and target opponent reveals. That way we save our Pyromancer. Discard this mountain. Get that last decay in their hand. Now they're hellbent. But they're ahead on board. Decay, Scooz, another Scooz is so rough for us. I think we're just gonna go ahead and chump this Scavenging Ooze. Leave our Pyromancer alive, obviously. Yeah, they could, with one of their Scoozes, eat. I think they're better off actually eating a card from my graveyard for to make sure that Reveler is not a draw. I think we're done here. Oh, man. That was rough. That was a lot of lands that game. Jeez. Come on, deck. Come on. Well, EE is not bad here. Moving on to the Last Hope, also not bad. We can make an argument for Molten Rains in any mid-range matchup. We probably don't want Ley Lines. All it does is shut off K-Command and half of a Tarmogoyf. We probably don't want this many Collective Brutalities. Probably want to trim one Blood Moon, although Blood Moon's not the worst. I guess we want probably Blood Moon over Molten Rain. I do like Molten. Actually, I think I want to keep in one Brutality. I don't know. I don't know about Molten Rain being good here. Maybe we want to trim one Bolt, but it's so important to kill Dark Confidant as soon as possible. But maybe we can trim one. Bring in one Molten Rain. Because I think Molten Rain can be really good to keep them off of like Bloodbraid Elf and stuff. Yeah, I think this is fine. Oh my gosh, we're supposed to trim discard. Well, forgot that we're playing against Jund, huh? I guess we keep that. It's kind of the hand we want against Jund. We don't want to draw too much discard, and hopefully we don't draw too much of it later. So we have an answer to Dark Confidant here, or a Goyf, or a Scooz. If our opponent leads with discard here, that's going to be rough for us. But if they keep up Bolt, That means Pyromancer. Yeah, I might just not even run out this Pyromancer, right? It's almost assuredly getting eaten by a bolt. Let's go ahead and get a Sacred Foundry here. Another Reveler, not what we want to see. The question is, they probably have bolts, so I'm going to go ahead and just pass. I don't want to give them an opportunity to just... Oh, they're just going to bolt face. Alright. You got it. They keep a one-lander, maybe? Is that why they're bolting? Ah. Do they have the discard now? Grim Lavamancer. Actually, I'm okay with that. We can kill that on our own time. I think we just want to set them back a land here. Ooh. That's nice. I think I'm just going to go ahead and just blow up the Raging Ravine, though. There's an argument to cutting them off of black. There's also an argument to thought seizing them first and then dreadboring here. It looks like they... I just want to save this dreadbore in case they really do have a Dark Confidant or something like that. Oh wow, they're attacking. Interesting. Yeah, I think we don't want to let them get value off of this Grim Lavamancer. So I think maybe the line will be to fetch up a swamp here, play on Pyromancer, dreadbore the Grim Lavamancer. They have Fatal Push for the Young Pyromancer or Terminate. That's fine too. We got our Elemental. I'm not too worried about a Liliana of the Veil. I mean, it could be a little bit annoying. But Lily 1, 2, Goyf. Sure. We can chump Goyf. We'll refill with Reveler. Ooh, Moon. Yeah, let's start with Thoughtseize. This might be a turn where they took... Oh my god, they just have all lands. Let's go ahead and see that again. Treetop, Ravine. Oh, that's going to be a nice Blood Moon. And then we can see 1, 2, 3. We're still 1 mana off of this Reveler. And they can still Bloodbraid Alpha, excuse me. So I think like a Faithless Looting would be really nice. Let's see. I think we want to go ahead and... Do we want to do 2 mode? Yeah, we probably want to do 2 mode. Target opponent reveals their hand, target loses 2 life. We just want to... Wait, let me just double check that I'm doing my math right here. 1, 2, 3. Only 3 in the yard, okay. Alright, so this should buy us some time. Discard 1 of the Revelers. Wow, okay, so they drew another land. Alright, so we'll go down to 9 next turn, then we play Reveler. Just like draw a Bolt or something. Blackleaf Cliffs. Alright, no Bloodbraid Elf this turn, so that's good. Could be another Grim Lavamancer. Ooh, that's unfortunate. I don't think I'm going to risk it, though. If I don't hit a land, that could be pretty bad. Oh, actually, yeah, it's... I don't think there's a world where I can actually play that. Wow. Those are all pretty bad. I think I'm just going to just hold them for looting. It might be a world where I'm chumping with Bedlam Reveler here. Alright, so they have 2 unknowns in hand. They can't cast most of their deck. I mean, they can cast more Goyfs, but I think this is time where I do need to chump. I'm getting souls. All right, that buys me a little bit of time. Maybe to find another Reveler. Sweet, and a Fatal Push. That is so great. I think we bin that. Do we want the land is the question. I think so. Oh, I guess we could have binned the moon. Yeah, that was kind of a loose play. To get the Blood Braid Elf here? Jeez. Alright, you got the Blood Braid Elf. Scavenging Ooze? Jeez. Yeah, they can play that. So I think we just have to kill the Tarmogoyf here to preserve life total. And maybe we can find like a Terminate or a Lightning Bolt for the Scavenging Ooze. And then obviously Reveler blocks the Blood Braid Elf. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Reveler should be discounted fully here. Let's go ahead and play it. Let's go ahead and looting. Looking for a Lightning Bolt here. Engineered Explosives. Ooh, I think K-Command is actually so good here. Return target creature, deals 2 damage to any target. Return a Reveler. Kill Scooz. So right now, the way we lose is our opponent goes like Swamp into stuff, or Blood Braid Elf into stuff, and looks like we got there that game. That was a grind. That was a grind, all right. So I think I definitely want to cut some number of Inquisition. Probably want to have all my Lightning Bolts. Collective Brutality is okay as a one of. Molten Rain, so maybe want to cut Blood Moon on the draw. Maybe cut 1 moon on the draw. If they want to play a slow game, okay, so maybe just trim. Yeah, I like kind of diversifying the land hate. Obviously, it wasn't great when they flooded that game, but I think it's also great at killing their man lands and stuff. Could also kill their basics in conjunction with Blood Moon. All right. Yeah, that's a keep. That is a keep, all right. Wow, opponent going to 5. That's not great. Let's. This is one of those moments where obviously Inquisition is great on an opponent's mull. And obviously, if our opponent is land light, then Molten Rain is going to be pretty backbreaking. Oh, just bolt me? They could just have like nothing in hand. Oh, they have stuff. I think we want to take the Maelstrom Pulse, as it does kill our Lingering Souls, even though they do need another land for that. I'm going to go ahead and take the Pulse, because we don't have a Young Pyromancer. So we drew a Swamp, so I'm more comfortable fetching a Sacred Foundry with this Bloodstained Mire. It'll be interesting to see what our opponent could draw here to get them back in the game. Looks like they drew a base. They fetched for a basic forest before their draw step, which means they might have. What's happening here? Like a Tarmogoyf, maybe. Oh, now they can't cast Terminate. That's really interesting decision on our opponent's part here. Whew. Okay, so thing is, we have all the tools we really need to win the game. So now it's a matter of how we want to sequence our spells. We could Molten Rain the Blackleaf Cliffs, and then next turn we can go Inquisition plus Lingering Souls, and to set up for a Reveler the following turn. And I think that's what we're going to do here. Obviously, hitting them off their force is better. If we draw Blood Moon, but Blood Moon is great in other ways. Alright, looks like my opponent doesn't have another land, so this is a bit of a non-game. Let's go ahead and Inquisition here. We probably want to take the Scavenging Ooze, as we're not too worried about Dark Confidant from this position. We do want to be careful of our life total, but let's go ahead and get a Swamp. Now we have a Lingering Souls in play. That's a clock. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. See, our opponent is down to a Bob and a Terminate. Wow, that's not a bad draw. I think what we want to do here is, let's see, let's double check, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could actually go Bolt, one, two, three. And then we attack with our spirits, and I think our opponent doesn't have much of a chance of getting back in this game, but I could be wrong. That could be me speaking a bit ahead out of turn here. Because we could, yeah, we swing in for a bunch here too. We could just like cast this Souls by itself. Yeah, I kind of like that. Actually, do we have lethal here? All right, hold up. Before we make any moves, so we can flashback Souls, cast Bolt, and that's, yeah, I think that's lethal, right? Yeah, that's lethal. Play that, Lingering Souls. Scar opponent's maybe F6 here. I don't want to take any chances though. Did I do my math wrong? Oh my god, I think I'm one off, aren't I? No, I'm not. No, that's I have one extra. No, it's Exactsies. It's Exactsies. I can do math. We go to 9. We deal them 9. Could have a Lightning Bolt here, but I don't see how they're coming back with just a Lightning Bolt, obviously. And there we go. We got there. All right. That's Mardu Pyromancer taking down the match against Jund. So clearly we're the better Jund, obviously. And as you saw, I mean, the Molten Rains were great against opponent mulliganing to 5, obviously, but the fact that we can main deck a card like Blood Moon, that we play cards like Lingering Souls, and that our Tarmogoyfs, aka Bedlam Revelers, also draw us 3 cards, really goes a long way in grinding out the opponent. I'm not quite sure if I sideboarded correctly in terms of like play draw, how many discard spells we want, how many Collective Brutalities, and Blood Moons and Molten Rains, but I think we want a good mix of those cards regardless to be able to combat Jund. Anyways, thanks so much for watching that first match here with Mardu Pyromancer, and stay tuned for the second match coming up soon.